Warning, this podcast contains heavy spoilers for not just one movie, but entire franchises. We highly recommend going and watching these movies before listening to us as a companion piece that stitches all the timelines into one creepy, crime-ridden story. There will be no more spoiler warnings. We do not break character. After this, there is no turning back. You've been warned. Hit the music.
You are talking about the nonsensical ravings of a lunatic mind.
It's alive! It's alive! It's alive! It's alive! It's alive! It's alive!
Hello and welcome to It's Alive podcast. This is a true crime, paranormal, interstellar podcast covering unbelievable stories that sound like they were ripped straight from the pages of a Hollywood script. I'm your host, the outlaw Dr. H.R. Smoking Scene T.H.E. and with me as always is my very own Scream Queen, the perfect combination of beauty and brains, the bride, the smoking teen, the India heart, the expert, guts and gore, the gorgeous, the sexy Amy Rose.
Hi.
And today we're headed back to 1970s London. We went from London to America, and now we're back in London again. 10 years later, though.
Yes.
A city soaked in smog, soaked in gin, and gripped by one of the most sadistic serial killers in British history. The spree that left police baffled, women terrified, and the press coining one of the most infamous nicknames ever, the Necktie Killer.
Yep, that's right. So between spring and late summer of 72, at least 4 women were found strangled with silk neckties across London's West End. The killer's method was precise, ritualistic, and weirdly tidy. Every knot the same and every body carefully staged.
And just when the police thought they had their man, they were dead wrong.
It began on a sunny Friday in June, London midday. Traffic snarled along the embankment, the smell of diesel, hot pavement and river water hanging in the air. A crowd gathered along the Victoria embankment where a politician was giving one of those clean up the city speeches. Nothing exciting until somebody screamed. Floating face down in the River Thames, her hair fanning out like seaweed, was a woman's body. 2 constables waded in, and when they rolled her over, the crowd recoiled. She was naked from the waist up, her blouse torn, around her neck tied with meticulous precision was a silk necktie. The knot was firm and deliberate, not a panic strangle, but something practiced, professional almost.
Have you seen the video for the news footage from this?
I
Because
haven't.
they had local news on this politician.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously they don't show what's in the water because it's the 70s and it's England and they have to be proper and there's no way they were going to show it.
still wouldn't show what was in the water now.
Huh?
On the news, they're not going to show that.
Ah, they would with her titties dangling out and everything, with a bobbing underwater. After watershed. But yeah, you just hear the people, you hear someone gasp and everybody screaming and running. And that's kind of where the footage ends and then it goes to the nightly 6 o'clock news.
Okay.
But within the hour, every major newspaper had the same headline. Necktie murderer strikes in central London. This woman would be identified as 30-year-old Roberta Gibbs. She went out for a few drinks with friends the night before and never came home.
During the autopsy, it was discovered that she was raped prior and post-mortem. The cause of death was asphyxiation by necktie.
So she was the first.
First confirmed and first with the necktie, but more are suspected. And police believe this was just the first time he left a calling card.
Meaning he had practiced and he was proud of this one. I mean, you see this with a lot of guys Bundy won't admit to killing a child when he was 15 because he's embarrassed by it. BTK for a very long time denied he's second or didn't confess or call out to being the perpetrator of his second crime because it went so horribly wrong for him.
Yeah.
He was embarrassed.
Yeah.
So he didn't want people to see. So in this case, it seems like our Necktie Killer has been practicing elsewhere and then got better. He's gone the Golden State Killer way. He's going up in levels.
Yes.
Visalia ransacker, East Area rapist, original Night Stalker, and you combine them to make the Golden State Killer. So this guy was just leveling up, and he felt comfortable enough to let people know this was his.
Exactly. And because he was so proud, he wasn't ready to slow down, and his next victim came only days later. The body was soon identified as Brenda Margaret Blaney, aged 34. She owned and operated a discreet introduction agency, which is kind of a matchmaking business on Oxford Street.
If you put the word discreet in front of it, though, it starts to sound a little
Dodgy.
shady, doesn't it?
She lived alone, and she was last seen at her office around noon that day. Her secretary, Monica Barling, told investigators that she'd gone out for lunch and returned to find the door locked. Through the frosted glass, she saw what she thought was a mannequin on the floor. When police forced entry, they found Brenda lying behind her desk with the same silk tie wound around her neck, but this time in her own office.
Once her name hit the papers, everything changed as well.
Mm-hmm.
The press started calling it the Necktie Murderers at that point, murders at that point, and the panic spread fast. Women stopped walking home alone. Taxi drivers were refusing fares after midnight. It was like the Ripper days all over again, only this time it wasn't prostitutes in Whitechapel. It was working women right in the middle of modern London.
Yeah, exactly. And Scotland Yard's Serious Crime Division took over immediately. Chief Inspector George Oxford, an old school copper with a soldier's bearing, was placed in charge. He brought in forensic analysts, photographers and handwriting experts, but the scene gave them little to work with. No signs of forced entry, no fingerprints on the doorknob. The tie was new, clean, high quality silk, the kind you buy from a Piccadilly boutique. The killer had even locked the door from the inside and slipped the key back under the mat. How polite.
Oxford told the press simply, "We are dealing with a man who is calm, deliberate, and familiar with women."
Mm-hmm. It didn't take long for the suspicion to land on one man, Richard Ian Blaney, who was Brenda's ex-husband.
It's always, because I mean, in every case, it's always the husband or spouse or boyfriend or significant other of the woman that is the main first suspect.
Well, that's because women are most likely to be killed by somebody close to them rather than a stranger.
Better fucking believe it, right?
Oh, I'd like to see you fucking try.
Do as you're
know who's
fucking
coming
told.
out and smelling roses in that one. A former RAF airman, now scraping by as a bartender in the West End. He was volatile, unemployed, and quick-tempered, and still known to argue with his ex-wife about money. Witnesses claimed they'd seen him entering Brenda's office that very day. And when detectives found that he'd had vanished immediately after her murder, it was all the confirmation that they needed. And the tabloids printed his face the next morning with the headline,
"Ex-husband sought in necktie slings."
Mm-hmm.
So Brenda's secretary said he had come to the office the day before under the influence and a little belligerent. Brenda told her secretary to take the evening off to avoid her being present for the awkward moment.
Yeah.
I get a little confused because Brenda and Belinda keep fucking me up. The secretary and the boss both have very similar names.
Yeah,
I keep forgetting
funny
who's. But yeah, Brenda told Belinda, take the afternoon off. This shit's getting weird. It's getting awkward up in here.
That night, Richard and Brenda went for a meal where, again, witnesses claimed to have seen Richard get upset before they left and parted ways for the night.
Rich was actually sleeping rough-ish. Do you know, he wasn't sleeping on the streets. Having lost his bartender job earlier that day due to his drinking, he was forced to stay at the local Salvation Army. So what he claimed happened was that, and I've seen bartenders do this, you know. Well, actually, I remember one bartender. I swear to God, it's the truth. I used to regular this bar, and I went up, and I was like a regular. I was there like constantly, and we get, you know, lock-ins, late night knock-ins, and all this kind of shit. And I went up to the bar, and I ordered my pint, and they were about €5 at the time. So I handed in the €5, and the man had like the €5 note, and he hands me back €5 in change, like coins. And I looked at it and then looked at him, and he just gave me a big smile, and I was like, all right, maybe he's giving me a freebie sound. And I walked off, and I found out the next day he had been fired because he was hammered drunk behind the counter.
Oh,
Well, he was
Christ.
rehired like a week or two later again. But it was kind of this situation where because he had a slight bit of a drinking, I wouldn't say a problem, more of a dependency than a full-on alcoholism,
yeah.
that while he was working, he would be sipping away. And basically his boss didn't like him very much. And his boss saw him drink the drink before paying for the drink. And he was like, well, do you know what? This is my excuse now. Out you fucking get, kid.
Okay. So the next day, Belinda left for lunch, leaving Brenda alone at the office. And upon her return, she saw Richard leaving Brenda's office building and minutes later discovered Brenda's body inside.
So Blaney was a natural suspect here. You know, it didn't help that after hearing the news of his ex-wife's untimely demise that he fucking went missing. You know, fled the fucking area and kept his head down.
Yeah.
And that they'd been fighting over money, that was, you know, instantly an issue. And the very next day, he had some money in his pocket. Now, it was later explained by himself, by Richard himself, when he had been kind of cleared of what was going on, that when he was out the night before with Brenda, and she knew he was having money troubles, she slipped £20 into his pocket without him realising it, which is why he was so flush the next day. Now, 20 quid to us sounds like fucking nothing, but in the 1970s, that was enough to get him a hotel room and for a couple of nights if he needed it, you know? Yeah. So it didn't look good that she turns up dead, he turns up with money, and then he doesn't turn up at all. Yeah. And goes missing. Yeah.
And Blaney had a mouth on him and a reputation for drinking, but no one knew him who knew him thought he had it in him. The poor bastard, he was just looking guilty because life had already chewed him up. And what police didn't see, and only what hindsight reveals, is that the real killer was hiding in plain sight.
But see, that's the thing, Blaney did kind of look like, I mean, if you were to look at it from the outside in, you can kind of understand where they were coming from. If the man is known for being aggressive, known to be a drinker, known to be, you know, low on money, low on luck, while his ex-wife is living the high life, making money, you know, being an independent woman in the 70s, without him kind of leaving him behind, you could understand why the police would be like, well, maybe jealousy, anger, you know, regret all played a part in this, and this guy just finally fucking snapped in his drunk haze, and here we are.
Exactly.
But that doesn't really explain why he killed the woman beforehand that turned up in the Thames. But, you know.
Sure doesn't. But Robert Joseph Rusk, age 38, a Covent Garden fruit and produce merchant, he was handsome in a rough kind of way with a constant grin and a silk carnation in his lapel. He was well liked, he was trusted, and the kind of man who'd help you carry your shopping bags or buy you a drink or fix your stall door without asking for a penny.
I have seen this guy in interviews and he makes me think of like a slightly better looking posh Del Boy.
Okay.
You know, better dressed, better. What did I say? Kind of like a young Michael Caine if he had Del Boy's mannerisms.
Nice.
He was also a collector of ties. He had dozens of them, all silk, all carefully knotted.
Oh, he stored them carefully knotted.
Oh, everything was pristine.
Do you know how many Stuart ties knotted?
I don't.
I think that's a terrible idea.
I have like a handful of ties and they're like bunched up in the back of my wardrobe somewhere because I might have to wear them once every, like 2-3 years.
Put them onto a tie hanger. So people said that Rusk had an old-fashioned charm. He flirted easily, but there was something about his gaze, too steady and too intent, that made some women uneasy. Years later, psychologists would describe him as a controlled sadist, a man who could mask his compulsion beneath manners and warmth, like Bundy.
Yeah, a lot like Bundy, isn't it? Rusk and Blaney had known each other for years. They met through the market trade, drank at the same pubs, and occasionally shared a meal. To anyone watching, they looked like opposites that somehow fit. Rusk, smooth and well-dressed. Blaney, scruffy but loyal. When Blaney was fired from his pub job that week, it was Rusk who bought him for a drink, you know, to console him. When Brenda's murders hit the papers, it was Rusk again who consoled him. And when Blaney became a fugitive, it was Rusk who pointed the police right towards him. It was almost perfect, too perfect. But quick question, why was Richard seen leaving the area of the murder in the first place? I mean, if she had just been killed and he's leaving, I mean, does he still have some?
It was a coincidence. Okay. He had called to follow up on the conversation from the night before, a few minutes earlier, and he would have interrupted Rusk in the act.
Oh fuck! So unfortunate. Just barely missed saving her, basically.
Yeah, exactly. While the manhunt for Richard Blaney dominated the headlines, Rusk struck again. The victim this time, Barbara Babs Milligan, aged 29. blonde, lively barmaid at the same pub where Blaney had worked. She was last seen alive leaving her flat on a Wednesday afternoon. Her neighbour recalled hearing laughter inside shortly before, a man's voice, familiar but indistinct. She didn't show up for work that night, and 2 days later her body was discovered, naked, partially covered and strangled with a tie identical to the first. The discovery location stunned the police. The back of a potato lorry parked outside London, and her body mixed among sacks of produce.
And at that point, they started looking for Irishmen.
I was just thinking that.
Fucking Brits. Here's where the case does turn kind of truly bizarre, though. The driver of the lorry was a man named Harry Oakes.
Mm-hmm.
He told detectives that a well-dressed gentleman had approached him near Covent Garden earlier that morning, asking if he could load a special parcel onto the truck. A private delivery, he said. Nothing illegal. Just fragile.
That would make me think it was illegal.
Oh,
if he was like, oh, it's nothing illegal.
I'd be like,
that's
you're
illegal.
showing me.
Yeah,
you're showing me first.
Yep. Well, Oakes didn't think much of it until later that night when he noticed blood on one of the sacks. He panicked, pulled over and called the police.
The people in the 70s were too trusting. That
Way
was the
too
problem.
trusting. When investigators opened the back, they found Babs Milligan's body. It's a hard name to say altogether, Babs Milligan's. And with her, it was a small jeweled tie pin clutched in her right hand. A gold pin shaped like the letter R.
Oh my God. That's the mistake. That's the moment every serial killer eventually makes. The one little oversight that unravels everything
But
for
sure,
him.
R could have stood for Richard or Robert.
Could have.
So, exactly. Though, as you said, Rusk, he panicked when he realised it was missing. And the story goes that he actually broke into the back of that potato truck in the middle of the night, trying to pry it from her dead hand before he reached the depot. He was still covered in potato dust when he got home.
Jeez, you can almost picture it. Him digging through the sacks, snapping her fingers open to get the stupid typing back. Imagine when he realised it. Like walking in home.
Like, shit.
Getting undressed. And you have to assume again, if he's got the ties up in the rack, everything's meticulously put away nice and tidily, kind of OCD style. And it's like, where's my tie
I can
pin?
feel that sinking feeling for him.
Oh, where do I last remember having it? I was strangling that girl, choking her. Oh, balls.
Fair play to him for managing to get it out of her hands. Like, that wasn't an
But
easy
that's
job.
the kind of horror that doesn't need blood, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I hate that when you see that in fucking movies and shit like that. It's like they have rigor mortis. We're going to have to break the hands. It's just the
Just wait a
banality
while.
of it. It was just so routine for him, the way he just kept going afterwards, like nothing happened, no big deal. Got my hour back. We're all good.
Yep. And within days of Bab's discovery, police traced both victims back to one man they already knew, Richard Ian Blaney. Both women had connections to him. Both were strangled and both linked to silk ties. When they tracked him down at a cheap boarding house in Soho, he was exhausted, hungry, and half out of his mind. He didn't resist arrest. He just kept saying, "You've got the wrong man." Oxford believed that the case was solved. Blaney was charged with 2 counts of murder, with charges for Roberta Gibbs pending following investigation, and remanded at Brixton Prison pending trial.
London exhaled. The city wanted closure and they got it, on paper at least.
Yep. By late July, the Necktie Killer headlines faded. The market reopened and women ventured out again. But behind the noise and normality, one man still smiled through it all. Bob Rusk, the real Necktie Killer, walking free, sleeping soundly, his secret trophies tucked beneath his floorboards.
You see what kind of fucking kills Blaney here as well is he was sleeping with Babs, who he worked with, you know? So he had his ex-romance and his current romance both found dead in the same way, you know?
Yeah.
And that's the thing about cases like this as well, you know, when you're talking about Rusk and him just, living his life, doing his thing. We talked about it on It's a Live Action this week?
Yeah.
Tomorrow. It's coming up
We
tomorrow.
talked about it tomorrow.
We talked about it tomorrow. and where we kind of go through guys like, Bundy, Gacy, Green River Killer, Gary Ridgway, D'Angelo, and Raider, and just how, sometimes evil doesn't look like a monster.
No.
It looks like your neighbor, your friend, the guy pouring your drink. It's like that meme that makes a joke of what you think a serial killer looks like, and it's Homer with the
What a serial killer
chainsaw
actually
and
looks
the fucking hockey mask on. And the next thing is what the serial killer actually looks like, and it's just Ned Flanders standing there smiling with a thumbs up.
Yep.
Idly ho,
Totally
neighbor.
So yeah, Rusk was the devil in a clip tie, and the next part of his story proves it. Because just when London thought the nightmare was over, the real killer got comfortable, and that's when he started to slip. For a few quiet weeks, London settled back into routine. The markets buzzed again, taxis idled in the drizzle, and the tabloids moved on to Parliament scandals. But in the police files, little inconsistencies began to stack up like crates in Rusk's stall. A missing tie-pin, fibres that didn't match Blaney's clothing, a pattern of neatness, surgical, ritual that didn't fit a man known for losing his temper.
I have a high temperature. Arrest that man.
Chief Inspector George Oxford read the reports at his kitchen table while his wife served him some experimental fresh dish she learned from TV. He barely tasted it. Something about those case notes scratched at him like grit under the skin.
Well, while Oxford stewed, Rusk thrived. He had become a small-time celebrity around Covent Garden. You know, poor bloke knew the madman Blaney. People said, people used to be like clapping him on the shoulder, buying him pints, just to hear the story. And Rusk was lapping it up. He bought himself a new suit, started drinking in better pubs, talked freely about the terrible business with the neckties, as though he were the victim of gossip, not the author of it. He even began approaching women again, charming them with jokes, always complimenting their accessories, the confidence of a man who felt he had beaten the system.
It's always the same pattern. Like they get sloppy when they think that they're invisible.
The arrogance of safety, every serial killer's death wish. I told you myself, like Ed Kemper used to be known for going to police bars and hanging out with the police that were investigating his case. Asking them about the co-ed killer. And because he was so big, bumbling and fucking soft-spoken, it was like, well, it's only Ed. Let's tell him. Yep. Something about Eds. They just know how to talk their way around this kind of shit. Ed Kemper, Ed fucking Gein. They have voices that just make you go, they couldn't be killing anybody.
Well, sometimes they do.
Gotcha.
Gotcha again.
Late
that August, a young secretary named Rita Davison disappeared after a night out near Soho. Her roommate reported her missing and the police filed it as routine. But when her handbag turned up in a skip behind Covent Garden Market, the headline writers smelled blood.
Necktie Killer strikes again, screamed the Evening Standard.
Oxford's superiors brushed it off as copycats. Inspector London's full of them. Still, he drove to the scene himself. Underneath the pile of rubbish, he found the remains of a silk tie, frayed but unmistakably identical to the others.
But Oxford didn't say a word at this point. He just folded it into an evidence bag and muttered, Blaney's still locked up, so who's wearing the tie?
Meanwhile, Richard Blaney sat behind iron bars, pacing. He'd stopped trying to convince guards of his innocence because nobody listened.
No, only one visitor came regularly, his public defender, who kept promising an appeal. Blaney refrain never changed. Ask Rusk, he'd say. But without proof, his words were treated as delusional. At one point, actually, they say Rusk came to visit him and kind of rubbed it in his face a little bit. Telling him, arrogance. We'll get you out of here. We'll get you sorted and all this shit. And that's kind of when he started to click. He was like, you motherfucker, you're the one that set me up. Ew. He saw through the mask before anyone else did, but maybe Rusk was letting him see through the mask. Maybe it was like, too late. The court case is done. You're in jail. I'm outside of here. Realize, that power of, just so you know, it was me all along. Letting the mask slip for just a second before putting it back up.
Yeah. By early September, Oxford had started shadowing Bob Rusk on his own time with no backup, no warrants, just instinct.
That's like the death fucking sentence for any criminal. When a cop takes that kind of interest in you. Not the, I'm going to get you while I'm on working time, but I'm going to watch you on my off time.
Yep.
That's when you are well and truly fucked.
Absolutely. So Oxford followed him through the market, noting every woman Rusk chatted up, every pub he lingered outside. At first, Rusk was as predictable as clockwork. The one night Oxford saw something that chilled him was Rusk entering a boarding house carrying a woman's overnight bag, leaving 2 hours later alone with hands freshly washed.
Oxford called in a small surveillance detail the next day. The order was unofficial, but the officers trusted his gut. Again, this is kind of before the time of red tape, left, right, and center, where everything isn't computerized. Things can be said to each other without worrying about anybody else find out. So if you're a respected police officer, a respected inspector, high up in the level, done your paid your dues, the other guys are going to follow and listen to you and be like, well, if this guy's got a hunch, maybe we should follow it.
Yeah, when Rusk left town for a produce delivery, Oxford made his move. The lodging keeper handed over a key without questions, and everybody trusted a policeman in those days.
The room looked spotless, to be fair. Like we said, he was very OCD. The ties aligned in colour order, bed neatly made, shoes shined. It was almost a thing of being too neat, too perfect, too clinical.
Yeah. Behind a wardrobe panel, they found a wooden box tied with twine. Inside was hair ribbons, bits of jewellery, and 3 silk ties stained brown at the edges. Each item were catalogued like souvenirs.
But Oxford didn't celebrate at this point. He just closed the box and whispered, "You bastard." He wanted to catch Rusk with his next victim. Undeniable proof. So he waited. You'd have to imagine that because you even see that now in this modern day. If they have someone put behind bars for something, that's case closed. That's one we got in the black, boys. Let's not put ourselves back down in the red here. We're going to stay in the black. This is good. And if you even bring up the idea of, well, you got it wrong, everyone in the department is against you. Because number one, the department's going to get sued for wrongful arrest and fucking incarceration. The media is going to fucking eat us up. Someone's going to have to be fucking fired. And we're going to have to go and investigate this case and retry it, which is going to be harder because we've already proven to be incompetent at it once already. So this guy's got a leg up on us by saying, well, you got the wrong man once. How do you know you're not getting the wrong man a second time? Yep. So you really want to have airtight, fucking lockdown evidence. It was the same, bring back up the Golden State Killer again. They knew from DNA matches they had this guy. But it was all about watching and waiting for the perfect time to pounce so that they could get him, nab him. In his case, it was more of a fear of, if we come crashing into this house and try and arrest the guy, we don't know what's inside that house. He could be prepared because he's seen this coming. He's been preparing for the last 30 fucking years. And it could just be, if I'm going down, I'm going to take as many of you with me and start shooting. So they waited for him to walk outside of his house to just throw some trash away or whatever, and then just surrounded him, and it was like, move, don't move, you're under arrest. And it was like, oh, game's up. So in this case, it's kind of something similar, but it's like, we need undeniable proof. We don't just need undeniable, we need to catch him fucking red-handed here to prove, because this is, again, before hardcore DNA.
Yep, it is.
The blood wouldn't make a whole pile of a difference in here. The necktie fibers, yes, I suppose they could, but they didn't match, and they'd be able to match the fabric back to the particular ties and shit like that. But you still really need to be catching the guy in the act, or in the act of confession, or the act of itself to nail him. Yeah, full on.
So meanwhile, though, Blaney rotted in a cell. So what made Blaney such a perfect suspect, on paper at least? Blaney was an ex-RAF man. He had the temper, the history, and the bad luck, and just enough connection to the victims to make it all look believable. But behind the headlines and the police theories was a man whose entire life had been a slow-motion collapse long before the necktie murders ever began. You could say Richard Blaney was a tragedy looking for a place to happen, and Bob Rusk had just handed him one.
Well, Blaney was born in 1930 in London. Like many of his generation, he came of age in wartime. He joined the Royal Air Force at 17. What a fucking age to be going into war. Serving as a flight officer. Those who knew him back then described him as disciplined and courageous, proud to the point of arrogance. But when the war ended, Blaney struggled to adjust. And we see this with a lot of people who came out of World War One and World War Two. That the adjustment period. I mean, the whole outlaw motorcycle fucking culture comes from guys who did not know how to live in civilized fucking society again when they got home from the chaos of war. And Blaney was no different. The structure that had defined his life was gone. He drifted through jobs, lorry driver, barman, hotel porter, none of which suited his temperament. He drank heavily, gambled when he couldn't afford to, and developed a reputation to quick fists and quicker temper.
Okay. But still, for all his volatility, Blaney wasn't cruel. He was just unlucky. He'd married Brenda young, but the relationship was a disaster. They separated within a few years and she moved on, rebuilt her life, and eventually opened her marriage bureau on Oxford Street.
What's a fucking bureau? No, it was a discreet matchmaking.
You're the one that has described it both times, so just saying. Blaney, on the other hand, bounced between jobs and bedsits, always a few weeks away from eviction. By the early 1970s, Blaney was working at a pub called the Globe Tavern in Covent Gardens. Ironically, it was the same establishment where Bob Rusk was a regular.
Yeah, and the two were friends of convenience. You know, the sort of friendships forged in pint glasses and late night compliments.
Yep.
Blaney envied Rusk's charm and stability. Rusk, in turn, used Blaney as a pawn.
Yeah. A friend of convenience, that was putting it mildly. One of them needed a drinking buddy and the other needed a human shield.
Fair fucking mix.
The Globe's landlord...
As long as if I'm going to be the human shield, you're buying the fucking drink.
The Globe's landlord, a man named Felix Forsyth, described Blaney as a decent chap when sober, but dangerous when crossed. His temper had cost him more than one job and was known to lash out when he felt cornered. So when the murders began and witnesses mentioned seeing Blaney arguing with his ex-wife days before her death, the police didn't need much convincing.
And like I said earlier, it didn't help when Babs turned up dead. He was connected to her romantically as well. In fact, he was nearly first arrested at a cheap hotel where he was shacking up with her for the evening. The hotel porter recognized Blaney from the paper. And this was before Blaney himself knew he was a chief suspect in the case.
Yeah.
You know?
But even with Blaney behind bars, Oxford continued to investigate. Oxford waited, and 2 nights later, Rusk was back in London. He drank at his usual pub, charming a newly arrived waitress named Mary Kent. Witnesses remembered how polite he was, how gallant, insisting on walking her home for safety. She laughed.
Bundy used to do the exact same fucking thing.
Yep.
Bundy, when he worked in the suicide hotline, the woman he used to work next to, the woman who wrote the book about him, saying that she had worked next to him the whole time, said he used to walk her out to her car every night.
He did?
For her protection, because he would, as he would say, there's a lot of crazy people out there, and he would genuinely bring her to safety, and she would genuinely sit next to him and hear him talk people down from fucking suicide. Fucking bonkers how these guys' minds fucking work.
Yep.
But obviously this guy's for safety was more of a not in the same way as Bundy was using it as a shield of look, I'm really a nice guy. This guy's just doing it for the audience.
Yeah, exactly.
There ain't no safety where Mary goes.
So Mary laughed and she said, sure. And the two disappeared into the mist. And by morning, Mary was gone.
Yep. A neighbor heard heavy footsteps on the stairs around midnight and the scrape of something being dragged across the floor. When she asked Rust about it later, he smiled and said he had been moving a bit of furniture. Oxford heard the report within hours and he didn't wait for a warrant this time. That's one thing. I dog cops a lot and I'll talk shit about police a lot. But this guy, Oxford, is like a fucking... this is the type of police officer you want on your case. If you need something done, this guy's going to get it done. This guy's a bloodhound, you know?
Yeah.
He is going to fucking stick to you like glue until he has gotten this sorted. He's an all old school good cop, like, you know?
Okay. At that exact moment, fate twisted again. A scuffle broke out in the prison infirmary where Blaney was being treated for ulcers. In the confusion, he slipped out a side door and vanished into the rain. Within 12 hours, every police car in London was looking for him, the escaped Necktie Killer. It was the perfect chaos for Rusk. All eyes turned toward the wrong man again.
But Oxford saw through it. If Blaney was on the run, he'd go to the one man he blamed for everything. Bob Rusk.
And that meant Oxford might finally have both predator and prey in the same room. Oxford positioned himself near Rusk's lodging that night, waiting. Hours passed, but then close to midnight, he spotted a gaunt figure creeping down the alley, Richard Blaney. The fugitive broke into Rusk's flat, thinking he'd confront his old friend, but what he found instead froze him. A woman's body on the bed, face covered, and a silk tie biting into her throat.
Mary Kent.
Yep. And as Blaney reeled, the door opened behind him. Rusk entered, dragging a large trunk, and for the first time the predator realised he was not alone. Oxford stepped from the shadows and said, "Good evening, Mr. Rusk." The rest was procedure. Calm, deliberate, final. Forensic teams swarmed the flat by dawn. The trunk was indeed for Mary Kent. Under the floorboards was the trophy box, and on Rusk's tie pin, microscopic fibres matching every known victim.
It's funny. I talk about how like cops were expecting the Golden State Killer's reaction, Joseph James D'Angelo's reaction to be, you know, if we go into that house, he'll come out shooting. When you look at like a good portion of these serial killers throughout time being arrested, and it's very similar to this, where they're caught in the act of something, or they're caught with some piece of evidence, or they're caught somewhere along the line, and it is a very calm affair. There's no freak out. There's no suicide by cop. It is very rare. It's like John Bundy was caught. Well, Bundy put up a fight. Bundy did put up a fight once he realized the cop knew what was in the car.
Okay.
But like BTK just sat there and fucking took it, and basically when he sat into the car with the cop or with one of the investigators, it was like, "You know who I am, don't you?" He was like, "Yup, took you long enough." And that's been the attitude of a lot of killers who get caught. It just, game's up. Knew this was going to happen eventually. You got me. And it seems like Rusk was just the same. It was like, well, because I would love to know what would have happened between Blaney and Rusk if Oxford hadn't been there. Hadn't been waiting, hadn't been staking them out. Do you know how would that have fucking ended? Yeah. And then how would the burden of proof and fucking evidence come into it afterwards? Because I mean, technically, could you not say, well, Blaney, after he killed Rusk, planted all this shit?
Yeah.
You know?
True.
He's been blaming Rusk for fucking so long. So you really need Rusk alive at this point, you know?
Yeah.
So Oxford being there definitely would have helped.
Yeah.
Well, obviously would have helped the situation. So, it was so Blaney at this point collapsed when Oxford told him he was a free man. And Russ just stared ahead as the cuffs clicked shut. Like I said, it was like it was nothing.
Yeah.
You know, this was going to come eventually.
Yeah. Yeah.
I knew the game I was in. You know,
it was bound to happen. It was inevitable. The trial of Robert Joseph Rusk began in February 1974 and lasted just 9 days. He appeared calm throughout, smiling at reporters and even winking at a few of the female clerks. When the prosecution laid out the forensic evidence, he simply straightened his tie and muttered,
"They've always been my downfall."
The jury took less than 2 hours to convict him on all counts.
That's almost polite efficiency for British justice.
Yep.
But there was some other fucking serial killer that did the same shit. That used to be winking at the fucking jury and waving at the jury. So I know Ramirez used to do it, but the women were actually calling for his attention. Yeah. Oh, Ramirez apparently had a huge female fan club.
He sure did.
Maybe it was Gacy that used to do it as well. I don't know, but they used to kind of...
Sounds familiar.
Yeah, I can't remember, but yeah.
I know he's not a serial killer, but didn't Manson not kind of interact a wee bit?
Yeah, if you can't...
No, but I mean, no, that was later on, though. That wasn't from like the initial trial at all. That was
I've
later on.
never seen the trial of Charles Manson.
When he was up in the box.
No, I've never watched any of the
Oh my God, I'm going to
trial
show you the
footage.
videos. Okay.
And is he all calm and collected?
No,
normal?
he isn't his arse. He's
So I'm
pretty
right.
much carrying on like you were there. Yeah, but as in that's like later in his life. But so Rusk was sentenced to life imprisonment with a recommendation that he never be released. He was transferred to Broadmoor Psychiatric Hospital where he remained under heavy supervision. Also where Myra Hindley.
Yeah, and they do love that over in England. They you know, you
You
could
go
get
to Broadmoor. Yeah.
you could get a life sentence, but as we all know, life sentences don't mean you're in jail for life. I mean, here it's like 15
years.
to 20 years.
20 years. Sorry, 25 to life is America.
Yeah,
Here it's 15 to
25 to
20
life.
years. Yeah.
England is generally 15 to 20 as well. Norway's got
You
some
just-
like,
yeah,
really,
that's
really low
crazy,
fucking,
yeah.
like 15 max, I think, is theirs.
Mm.
But then the British have this thing where we have the capital crime where you get 40 years, where you can get a maximum of 40 years, but you have to kill a cop,
Priest.
a priest.
Does the priest still
We
apply?
don't know. You ask me this question every time we bring up capital crime, and I keep forgetting to look it up. But a cop is the main one, and a soldier, I believe.
Because it was in our
And-
constitution until very, very recently that our death penalty was gone, but it was still in the constitution until recently that you could get the death penalty for killing a cop or a priest. It just wasn't acted on.
And then the English have what's called, you can get life imprisonment with a lifetime tariff,
Yeah.
which means that basically says life.
Somebody
You do not
very
leave
recently
here.
got a whole life tariff in...
You ain't walking out of this
UK.
prison alive.
Shit, who was that?
They used to bring up.
Was it Lucy Letby? I think she got a whole life tariff.
I don't know. I know it used to come up a lot with Rose West because of her being alive. It used to come up fairly fucking often about her having a life tariff and fighting it and trying to get away from it.
Can you imagine Rose West? Who in their right mind is going to listen to that? Like, as in, oh yeah, do you know what? You're right. She
Is
probably
Rose
didn't do
West
it.
still alive?
Yes, she's still alive. Last time I checked.
I thought she
Rose.
died. I don't know why I had it in my head that she died.
If she
like
did,
last
it's
year.
only recent. No, she's 71.
Well, that's what I meant. Like, it would have been the last year that was in my head. I know the other cunt fucking killed himself, didn't he? Before the trial.
Yeah, he did. So he died in 1995. Lucy Letby did get a whole life tariff.
She's the nurse, right?
She's the nurse, but there's a lot of people speaking in her favour now because there's a lot of other
So
stuff.
could be
coming
kind
up.
of going the other way now.
Could be going the other way on her, exactly.
Okay.
If she isn't guilty, it would be nice to see her come out. Do you know, as in, like, not for it to be brushed under the carpet.
Oh, that wouldn't be brushed under the carpet.
Mm.
That would be fucking. Do you think the media are going to let that one go?
But that's it. She's got a lot of supporters now speaking against her and a lot of demonstrations over there because of what's going on in that hospital. But back to Rusk. So
Okay.
Rusk was sentenced to life imprisonment with a recommendation that he never be released, as I said. Blaney, meanwhile, he was officially exonerated through the damage to his reputation, but his damage to the reputation was irreversible. He lived the rest of his life quietly, a bitter man haunted by the crimes of his so-called friend.
How many times have I said this? It doesn't matter. Well, like, the shit of innocent until proven guilty is so fucking backwards. It's the way it should be, but it's not the way real society works.
No, it's guilty until proven innocent.
until proven innocent. And even after you're proven innocent, we're always going to say, even if we've caught the other guy red-handed, we're always going to suspect you of something. Because if they suspected you of something,
There must
you
be
must have been a
something there,
reason
like,
why they
yeah.
suspected you of something. So you're never able to get that back, do you know? I mean, I always say it's like the worst thing you can do is accuse someone of a really, really terrible crime
Mm-hmm.
because that stain sticks to you. Whether the fucking justice system tries to wash it off you or not, it's still there.
And it
It's
follows you everywhere.
always there.
Yeah.
And in the meantime, I mean, he's got this fucking stink on him, but the newspapers are dubbing Russ the gentleman's fucking strangler. You know? It's
Yeah.
how do you win here? Like, you know?
And that moniker stuck because, unlike most killers, Rusk didn't fit the stereotype. He was polished, articulate, and even likable. To the public, he represented something far more terrifying than the typical monster. The idea that evil could wear a smile and hold the door open for you.
But see, this is the thing.
That's the devil, like. It's the exact same as the devil.
But this is the thing.
supposed to be.
This is the early 70s.
Mm.
This is where you have that changeover from monsters looking like monsters to monsters being able to blend in.
Well, yeah.
Do you know what I
yeah.
mean? prior to this, you got your Henry Lee Lucases, your Ed Geins, the people who you can tell that the brain isn't fully functional. And now suddenly, like we're going to talk about tomorrow, and it's a live action, you got guys like John Wayne Gacy, who's taking part in community events and political events and has an established business where he hires young men to work hard and make a way for themselves. You have Ted Bundy, who's going to law school and who women pine over. You got Gary Ridgway, maybe a little slow, but man, could he paint a van. And marry women, apparently. Jesus Christ. 3 fucking women married Gary Ridgway. Everybody has a chance. Listen to me, incels. Everybody has a chance. I mean, BTK, that guy was a straight up fucking asshole, but he blended perfectly into his surroundings. And this is kind of when that happened, the 70s. Do you know? The late 60s, early 70s, the golden age of the serial killer. It was because they learned how to fucking hide correctly. Yeah. They got smarter. A Scotland Yard officer later said, Rusk made London realise the killer doesn't always lurk in the shadows. Sometimes he's buying your fruit and calling you love. And that's what makes him timeless in the worst possible way.
Yep. And even after his conviction, rumours persisted that he had bragged to fellow inmates about teaching the coppers a thing or two. So,
do they know what motivated Rusk to do what he did?
Yeah, I suppose to work that out, we got to go back and look at Rusk's early life. Okay. And to understand how London's most charming market trader became one of its most sadistic killers, you have to go back to where it started. The life of Robert Joseph Rusk, born in 1934 in London's East End. Rusk was the kind of man who could have sold ice cream to an Eskimo, or ice even to an Eskimo. Quick with a joke and easy on the eyes, and with a handshake that felt like a promise. He was a fixture of Covent Garden Market long before the papers called him the Necktie Killer. But behind the charm, something darker was brewing.
All I'll say is, if you can sell ice cream to an Eskimo, it is also a very good thing, and we shouldn't be calling them Eskimos anymore. If you can sell ice to an Inuit, it's a good job. If you can sell ice cream to an Inuit, that's still a good job because they're still cold and you're giving them a cold treat. You think they'd want something warm to warm them up.
True.
So, I mean, that's still an accomplishment. Plus, every time I hear someone mention the East End, all I hear is dun 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 dun.
Sling Europe.
EastEnders. Yeah, so Bob Rusk was what people called a good lad with bad wiring. Mm-hmm. On the surface, he looked like a bloke who just loved the market life. Banter, booze, a bit of fun. Underneath, though, there was just something not right. Something twisted, something broken.
Rusk's father left when he was 6, disappearing during the war. Some said that he was killed in an air raid, and others whispered that he ran off with another woman.
He just went out for a packet of cigarettes.
Or milk, if you're today's generation.
Apparently an extremely dangerous job for a fucking husband and father.
Go and get milk.
Milk and cigarettes. You go out to get milk and cigarettes, you might never be seen again. So I make Amy go get all the milk.
Yeah.
We don't smoke cigarettes anymore just because of this reason.
I'm afraid he'll run off on me. Either way, young Bob grew up in a cramped flat with an embittered mother who blamed him for the man who'd gone. She was harsh, religious to the point of fanaticism, yet fond of the bottle. And when she wasn't praying, she was shouting.
It's like Augusta Gein with a fucking bottle of booze,
hand.
Or Norma Bates with a bottle of booze. I mean, Take your pick.
Yep. Bob grew up desperate to please her, desperate for approval. And when he didn't get it, something in him curdled.
Classic origin story. I mean, we've been talking about it for fucking weeks. The boy who learns early that love and punishment come from the same hand. Mm-hmm. Very reminiscent of poor old Bates, but at least Norman had some redeeming qualities about him.
Exactly.
Rusk makes my fucking skin crawl every time I listen to him talk.
Yep.
Do you know what he used to do when he was raping him?
No.
He said this himself or later. I don't know how they got this out of him, but apparently, that was right. There was some sort of sexual assault in the prison. You know the way prisoners get prison gay. Mm-hmm. And apparently, as he trussed, he used to like to go, nice.
That's fucking creepy.
Nice.
Yeah. So he started small, cruelty to animals and petty theft. But even as a teenager, he could talk his way out of trouble. Neighbours remembered him as polite and well-spoken. He dressed sharp even when he couldn't afford to, borrowing jackets from friends just to look respectable.
That obsession with appearance never really left him.
Exactly.
And that ability to look and sound the part is more like, I mean, it's where like sayings like, you know, dress for the job you want, not the job you have, and all this kind of shit comes from, or, you know, fake it till you make it and all this kind of shit. This is what this dude was doing. He just made an entire lifestyle out of it because he could never really show who he really was. So he built the perfect fucking cover.
Exactly. And by his 20s, Rusk was working in Covent Garden. And back then, it wasn't the polished tourist spot it is today. It was raw, full of shouts, sweat, crates, and characters. But Rusk fit right in.
Yeah, he started selling fruit, then expanded into private orders, meaning anything he could get his hands on: produce, jewelry, women's stockings, blue movies. That's where you used to get your porno back in the day, kids. the fucking weird, creepy dude in the stalls. I don't know, because that was even beyond my day. We had Bravo and Minute Motors and shit. We were fine. He always had something special tucked away though for his favorite customers.
And women loved him. He had that easy grin, the kind of made you that made you think you were the only person in the world.
It's always the smile that gets you. You see a smile like that in Covent Garden and you think, what a gentleman. Meanwhile, he's mentally measuring your neck size.
Exactly. And friends said Bob never lacked female company, but the relationships never lasted.
He'd charm them, control them, and when they pushed back, he'd snap their neck, literally.
Rusk's violence didn't appear overnight. It built in quiet ways. Resentment towards women who rejected him, frustrations over debts, envy of men like his friend Richard Blaney, who had once been successful, married, and even admired. Rusk envied that.
Incel alert.
But he also pitied Blaney. To Rusk, Blaney's downfall, his failed marriage, his unemployment proved that all men eventually lose control.
Serious fucking incel alert. This dude black pilled himself. Oh, well, actually red pilled himself because he was trying to, what did they call it again? Looks max himself by doing himself up and making himself look good. And when I control, when you talk about losing control, that's the word with Rusk right there. Control. Every kill, every knot, every detail was simply about power.
Yep. But Rusk wasn't impulsive and his victims weren't random. He chose women who were confident and independent, or in some way reminded him of the mother who had humiliated him as a boy. A police profiler later wrote,
"The killer displays not rage, but ritual. The act of strangulation suggests intimacy mixed with dominance. He derives satisfaction from the slow surrender of control. And what better symbol of control than a necktie?"
When the verdict came down on the afternoon of March 2nd, 1974, courtroom 2 at the Old Bailey went silent. The foreman's voice barely carried as he said the words everybody expected: guilty on all counts. Robert Joseph Rusk didn't flinch. He simply adjusted his tie, the same habit that had betrayed him again and again, and then smiled.
Yep, that smile, you can almost picture it. Like he's posing for a photo instead of being sentenced to six murders.
Exactly. And Rusk's demeanour throughout the trial unsettled even hardened observers. While the prosecution presented graphic photographs, he sat calmly and occasionally humming to himself. At one point during the testimony from Inspector Oxford, Rusk leaned forward and whispered audibly,
"You should have left me alone, George. I was finished." The press ate it up. The Daily Mirror ran the headline, "Gentleman Strangler takes his bow."
Yep.
But what does that mean? I was finished. I mean,
he wasn't going to do anymore. He'd finished. He's got his thrill.
Do you think it was like to go back to BTK and the Golden State Killer, how they almost kind of fucking retired? Like,
yeah.
Took a step
Probably.
back,
I think
stopped
that's what
killing. Was it just that he had felt he had gotten his rush now and he was going into sleep mode
maybe.
for a while?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. The prosecution's case was ironclad. Forensic specialists matched fibres from Rusk ties to 4 victims. Fingerprints found in one of the crates matched his right thumb, and witnesses placed him with at least 3 victims in their final hours. The defence attempted the insanity route, arguing Rusk suffered from sexual compulsion linked to maternal trauma. But Rusk refused to plead insanity. He told the court,
I'm not mad. I'm just different. I know what I did. Well, congratulations. That's not exactly a self-defense strategy of the century.
No, it wasn't. And Judge Hollingsworth described him as the most dangerous specimen of humanity ever to stand before this bench. He recommended Rusk remain confined for life for the protection of all decent people.
Rusk bowed slightly like an actor acknowledging applause and replied, "Thank you, my lord." Mm-hmm. This guy's a real fucking character, like.
Oh, he's pure. He sounds pure like Toffee Nose, kind of, yeah. He was transferred to Broadmoor Hospital under maximum security. The tabloids called it the gentleman's final address. Why did he go to Broadmoor if he refused to plead insanity? Or was it just a thing of, well, the judge
I suppose at the time again, would they? You're talking about a time where the idea of serial killings is a very new concept.
How did Myra
I wonder, would it just have been a case of to do something like I've always said, to do something like this, you have to be a little fucking crazy, and maybe that was just the place they sent those kind of offenders.
Okay. Oh, okay. Yeah. See, I think they kind of method acted insanity, Ian Brady and Myra Hindley, because I was just wondering, because she was in Broadmoor Hospital as well. I know a lady that actually nursed her while she was in Broadmoor Hospital.
Yeah. What she said she was like? Nice woman.
Strangle a bird with her hand in front of her.
Mm.
Yep. There you go. That's pretty much sums up Myra Hindley.
So good hunter.
Good hunter. But even in Broadmoor, Rusk maintained his peculiar civility. Staff records described him as polite, clean and cooperative. He taught himself calligraphy, tended a small garden patch and wrote letters to newspapers complaining about sloppy grammar in crime reporting. Oh my God, he sounds like joy.
Take it easy. And that's what a serial killer giving writing lessons to Fleet Street, you know? Yep. Fuck off.
Yep. And in his early interviews with prison psychiatrists, Rush spoke about his crimes in the past tense as if they'd been performed by another man entirely. It's so like Bundy.
Yeah, it's like Bundy through and through, wouldn't he?
Bundy talks like this when he talked about his.
That's because he didn't want the other guy that did it to hear himself. No. He didn't want to be a snitch. The other guy in my head might hear us.
They were all done for him.
And I wouldn't mind. This guy's correcting people's grammar. You know, if he worked in the markets in the East End, he had the biggest Cockney motherfucking accent and slang going. Anyway, it's a question of pressure, he told one doctor. You start wanting to show them who's in control, and then it becomes about finishing what you started. You'd be surprised how quiet they get at the end. Well, they're dead. That's generally what happens when people die. They go quiet. The psychiatrist's note simply read, displays no remorse, treats murder as a hobby.
While Rusk settled into confinement, the outside world was left to process the shock. London, for a brief, strange period, developed a morbid fascination with the case. Bars in Soho sold cocktails called the Silk Noose. I'd like to try it, actually. Covent Garden traders joked nervously about keeping your tie straight. And the public couldn't decide whether Rusk was a monster or a myth, too civilized to be real and too horrific to forget.
And of course, the conspiracy theory started. People claiming he was part of a secret club, or the police framed him to cover up for others. But for the investigators who lived it, there was no myth, just relief and fucking exhaustion.
Yep. Inspector Oxford retired a year later, quietly and without ceremony. When asked about Rusk in a BBC interview, he said,
"He was what happens when charm meets cruelty. We all liked him. That's what made him dangerous."
And as for Richard Blaney, the man wrongly convicted, the government issued an official apology and a modest compensation package. He refused both for several months before finally accepting. I would have refused the modest compensation package, and I'd have been like, I want a fucking massive compensation package. That's stuck with you, like you said, for the rest of your life.
When they say modest compensation, it's usually a big compensation package. Okay. But I'd say he was pretty much set up.
Good. He lived in a Brighton hotel for the rest of his life, working as a night porter at a seafront hotel. Locals said he rarely spoke, and when he did, it was about flying, but never about London. He died in 1981, quietly, in his sleep. Among his belongings was a newspaper clipping of Rusk's conviction folded so many times the ink had worn off.
His life was destroyed because his best mate liked expensive toys. That's grim, even by London standards.
Mm-hmm. Oxford later said Blaney's case changed police procedure across the Met. From then on, circumstantial evidence alone was never enough to close a file.
They called it the Blaney Clause.
Yep. And Rusk's years in Broadmoor weren't without incident. He developed an almost cult-like following of a small circle of criminology students who wrote to him, fascinated by his composure. He answered most letters, signing each one with the same phrase.
To thine own self be true.
To thine own self be true. Where do I know that from?
That is a quote from somewhere, all right. And this is the see, this is like the double-edged sword.
Ah, it's from Hamlet.
Yeah, it's just the double-edged sword of the thing, because we discussed this before when we talked about like the death penalty. And it's like, well, giving a serial killer the death penalty takes away a lot of opportunities for us to study them and work out what's making them tick and what makes them work, or to experiment even on these little cunts. Put them in a fucking box and let's just fuck around with them and see what we can do, see what way their brains work and stuff like that. But the problem is a lot of them get off on that fucking interaction, get off on that attention. So this guy's loving it.
Yep.
He's like BTK over here, just being like, yep, send me a letter, I'll send you back a little fucking quiz, and
Absolutely.
if you fill the application out and I'm happy with it, I'll interview you.
Yep.
Nasty motherfucker.
But that calm exterior eventually cracked. In 1979, Rusk assaulted another inmate, strangling him during a dispute over cigarettes. The attack mirrored his earlier crimes, and guards intervened too late. The man was already dead.
When questioned, Russ shrugged and said he tried to take what was mine, which ironically is the same excuse he used for every woman he ever killed.
Exactly. And after that, he was moved to solitary confinement. Doctors noted a rapid decline in his mental health. He became withdrawn, paranoid, and convinced the market voices from Covent Garden were echoing through the walls. In 1983, Rusk was found dead in his cell, reportedly from pneumonia. He was 49. Officially, it was natural causes, but some whispered that he tied a bedsheet too tightly around his own neck.
The coroner's report simply stated no foul play suspected, death consistent with illness. Yeah, but you can't help but picturing it. Can you, the necktie killer finishing the job himself. It's kind of poetic, if nothing else. But I could see why they'd want to cover that up at the same fucking time. It's almost like him getting out the way he wants.
Well, it doesn't look good for the cops when somebody in solitary confinement manages to kill themselves. Like, do you know, you'd have a lot of human rights people. Well, now you would have, because a lot of human rights organizations are trying to get rid of solitary confinement, especially in America.
I know what they're trying to fucking do. They're trying to keep the Rusk list hidden.
Yeah.
Release the Rusk list. We want to see it. We want to see those couple of seconds of footage that's missing between when Bob Rusk goes into the cell and Bob Rusk is found dead. We know they're there.
He never came out of the cell. It was solitary confinement. Rusk was buried in an unmarked grave near the Broadmoor grounds, and only 3 people attended. A prison chaplain, a nurse, and a journalist who wasn't supposed to be there. If I was Richard, I'd have gone and been like, fuck you, watching him go down.
Oh, I'd have been fucking pissing all over that.
The chaplain described the burial as eerily quiet, with no wind, no birds, just silence.
Maybe London itself was finally done with him.
Maybe. But even in death, Bob Rusk left his mark. His case reshaped how British law enforcement approached serial homicide. Profiling divisions were expanded, forensic departments modernised, and his name became a cautionary tale in criminology lectures. The killer who looked like a gentleman and fooled a city.
And of course, Covent Garden tried to clean up its image. New shops, fresh paint, buskers instead of butchers. But under all that polish, there's still the memory.
Mm-hmm. Every old trader remembers him, and they talk about Bob in half whispers, a joke that trails off into the silence. The spot where his stall once stood is now a coffee kiosk. People drink lattes there without realising they're standing over history soaked in fear.
A Scotland Yard archivist once called Russ the last of the old-fashioned killers, whereas I'd argue he was probably one of the fucking originals of the new breed of the golden age. He didn't stalk victims with gadgets or cars, she said. He just walked up to them, smiled, and offered them help. That's why he worked, because he looked safe. And that's what makes him stick in your head. You you start looking twice at every friendly fucking guy with a tie on, you know?
Exactly.
It's like, you might look like, it's that again, the whole thing of a wolf in sheep's clothing,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. And for decades after his death, Rusk's name would resurface every time another strangler appeared in the news. A new Rusk, they'd say. But there's only ever been one Bob Rusk.
A man who proved evil doesn't always come with warning signs. Sometimes it offers to carry your shopping bags for you.
In the end, perhaps the strangest thing is how ordinary it all looked. The ties, the flowers, the smiles, props in a performance that fooled nearly everyone. And even after his conviction, people who'd known him refused to believe it. Not our Bob, they'd say. Sure, he was harmless. Maybe that's why his story still haunts London, because he wasn't a monster in the shadows. He was a man standing beside you at the bar.
And that's the real horror.
Yep.
Rusk once told a Broadmoor guard, "People will forget what I did, but they'll never forget how I looked doing it." He wasn't wrong.
So that's where the story of Bob Rusk ends. A life knotted in silk and sealed by justice. The Necktie Killer became part of London's legend, his crimes retold every generation as a warning. Beware the smile too quick, the charm too smooth, the gentleman who insists on tying your scarf.
Because sometimes the devil wears a tie.
Never had a guy offer to tie my scarf for me.
It's a weird fucking thing to offer.
Exactly. Well, that concludes our case on the necktie murders.
It's kind of going to conclude our fucking shitting serial killers for at least a week. Because next week we're going a bit paranormal with you.
We are. I'm looking forward to it.
You've been asking for some paranormal, so we're doing some paranormal. It's all you next week. So I won't give too much away just yet. We'll wait for next week. And then we'll get back to serial killers.
Yep.
Again and again and again and again and again and again until the end of the year. I'm looking at our calendar over there now.
A wee bit. There's a reason.
They're
we don't
all
do
very
cannibals.
different stories, trust me. They're not like this guy at all. At all. In fact, our next serial killer story will involve two female serial killers who cross each other's path in a fucking 3-parter that we're going to be doing. But that's after we do our paranormal series next week.
And if you want more horror and crime fun, then head on over to patreon.com/the Horrorverse Network and check out our bonus show. It's a live action because tomorrow we'll be dropping our bonus show episode where we look at killers who hid in plain sight. Guys like Gacy, Bundy, Raider, Ridgway, and D'Angelo will be profiled.
And while you're there, check out the rest of our Patreon exclusive shows like Amy's Horrific History Show, Playing with Bones, and Celebrity Rap Sheet, which has now started its second season. A big 4-parter on the life and crimes of O.J. Simpson. Part 1 is out now and ready to listen to. But I will warn you, part 1 is pretty much chill. It's pretty easy. We had to just kind of get into his early life and what made O.J. tick. We'll get into the real guts and gore of it come next week onwards. But I always love the OJ story. I have crazy conspiracy theories about OJ Simpson. I've read the book, and I have already said on the show that when the right time comes, I will read the chapter of If I Did It, where he describes how the crime actually took place in his own words.
Looking forward to it. All that and mini monsters are available now on at the Horrorverse Network on Patreon. Subscribe now for only $5 a month with a 7-day free trial for all new users. And if you're into gaming, you can catch me on Twitch most Mondays from 10 p.m. to midnight Irish time, which is 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. Eastern time. That's on Twitch at AmyRose9.
And you can catch us on social media at It's Alive Alive Pod or at Alive Alive Pod. We're on pretty much everything. We mainly work with TikTok and Instagram, but we check everything. And you can find her on Amy Rose IAA at Amy Rose IAA. Yep. All her good stuff too. We'll be back next week with more tales from the Horrorverse. See you then. Same Alive Alive time, same Horrorverse network. Okay, love ya. Bye bye.
Hey, lady, love you. Bye bye.